Hi there, I'm Illena Armstrong, and I'm glad to be here with you for our AI and Clouds Threats and Vulnerabilities Summit. And with me is a very long-time industry expert, extremely active member of CSA's AI Safety CISO Advisory Council, Hira Dangol, who also is the CEO and Chief AI Officer of GenEye Labs, which is a new AI native venture focused on enterprise AI transformation. So welcome here. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Helena.
So we got 20 minutes. Let's just get right into it. How is AI fundamentally, from your perspective and experience, reshaping the enterprise operating model, not just from the perspective of the tech stack, but also in regard to organizational charts, workforce structures, decision rights? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that fundamentally, AI is no longer just a tool upgrade. It's shaping how enterprise make decision, allocate authority, and execute work. So if you look back historically, the application automated workflows, analytics informed decisions, human remains the operational control plan. Now, with the shift that we are seeing is AI systems increasingly participated on decision making. Agents coordinate workflows across system. Organizations are moving from process centric to intelligence centric operating models. The biggest shift is enterprise are evolving from software defined business to AI orchestrated business. So what that brings in is organizational design change, workforce compositions, governance models we've been talking about, budget ownership, risk management structure. So that's what I see in the practice, right? So the future enterprise is not organized around application; it is organized around intelligence orchestration powered by the AI.
And so, given the complexity of that environment and how things are quickly evolving, organizations are trying to keep up. Um, Identity, data lineage, model provenance, which of these would you consider to be the weakest link in trustworthy AI today? And what should an enterprise team do about it? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So identity is the weakest link.
Yeah.
Enterprise know who logged into SaaS or who has access to the APIs, but in current context, they don't often do not know which agent invoked which models under what authority or using which data context. With that, what downstream impact could potentially happen, right? So AI identity and delegated authority management become fundamentally, functional for us. So that what does that mean? Without identity, the lineage weaks or lineage breaks. Provenance potentially weakens from there, and then finally the accountability collapse. Right. That's kind of the where IP see is taking from this left approach to the right approach, going down to that path.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at an event last week, and the talk was all about agentic AI workflows, observability, controls, identity, all of it. Exactly what you're talking about. When it comes to these various deployments, how should professionals, the executive leaders, really attempt to measure their ROI in a way that is, good for the CFO, but it also doesn't necessarily impede experimentation or stop breakthroughs from happening.
That's a great shift that's already happening in Q1 and Q2 of this year, coming from experimentation, pilot mode AI to production deployment, the heavy investments that's were done, right? This is the number one question right now in the boardroom discussion, all the way from boardroom to CEO and the CFOs. The industry is shifting from model metrics to business outcome metrics, which is the ROI components. CFO perhaps doesn't care about now parameter counts, benchmark scores, demo quality. They do care about now is based on the ROI need and the value measurement, cycle time reductions, operational efficiency, revenue acceleration, risk reductions, or workforce leverage. A practical framework could be, how do I measure the time to value, right? Based on the models I bring, the agents or the application I built on top of the models too, right? Cost per outcome is becoming very essential. Human productivity multiplier is the highest focus. and then looking at the risk adjusted savings, and then finally the decision velocity improvement, the solutions we're bringing into production, right? Every AI workflow should expose measurable telemetry, I would say, right? Taking from this whole AI strategy piece that I have projected, let's say, $20 million, I would, bring in from one or two use cases based on the nature and the category of the business you are operating on, and then enabling this kind of the AI workflow. It could be agents, models, or the AI powered solution that goes into productions. What is the measurable value or ROI I can now measure out of the the data I have discussed at a strategy level? I think that's going to be the biggest shift from this year onwards in the AI in this space.
You're talking about all of these various areas that organizations should be taking into consideration, and certainly we're hearing that many are, right? But at the same time, that there are these companies and enterprises that are being pretty thoughtful and taking some of these steps. There are others where they aren't necessarily thinking about the outcomes specifically. Perhaps they're missing what the outcome should be. They're also not talking about like the cost per outcome, and really showing that. So all of us have heard these projects get killed. I'm just wondering what signals tell an executive team that an AI project is just not, maybe it's going off the rails, it's not working, and when they make that mistake, how do they correct for it next round?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge we went through last year, perhaps because of the rapid borderable pressures and this the demand to start the AI initiatives. The investment were made in the context of the technology and the people aspect, right? Meaning like hiring and then the producing this kind of the stability maturity. If you look at those, some of the signals we were able to gather around the context of the still projects versus the the AI solutions that was sitting within the pilot mode for a number of weeks, right? Because there are signals that were keeping them in the pilot mode is fundamentally are those use cases were designed to align within the business outcome from day one or not, right? Are we looking at the data maturity from the context of when I move this from this simple pilot mode to the complex workflow business integration? Can I rely on those multi-contextual data architecture or not, right? And then lastly, I think the governance has been fundamentally non-negotiable piece as it comes to a highly complex enterprise scope to regulated industry. So making sure that the pieces are fully aligned to get into the production deployment, and many of those projects has been killed, right? In terms of either these are happening around the silos context. There was less alignment or stakeholder being fully buying into to move forward, right?
Yep.
That shift had already happening with now coming with the new agentic workflow and agents looking to move into more production scale, taking this more from the strategic align to business value driven use cases. It could be value based, risk based, and scalability based kind of the criteria being used now, prioritize use cases so that you can move fast, right? Right investment can be made. All kinds of eval tests can be run at the pre-production deployment to runtime control piece that you can introduce at the execution of those agents making decision and the actions at business outcome level. So that's the speed and the velocity we're going to see as a new learning curve that's happening.
And so when you're talking about that, and you're talking about like some of the runtime security and safety measures that should be taken, we hear a lot about that word trust when we're talking about these AI deployments, the agentic AI deployments, and this control plane that we have to get a handle on. From your perspective, then, can you talk a little bit about how you communicate to CXOs and their teams what trustworthy AI actually means, operationally, but then also just for others across the organization and then customers?
So the trust and the governance becomes a fundamental kind of the gateway system for AI systems or the AI solutions to go into productions, right? And we've been talking this from cloud area, how do we build like this security by privacy design or the privacy by security design, right? These all kind
Yep.
of principles we've been talking about years. those principles are still relevant from the context of deploying these scalable and reliable AI solutions at production at scale. I do believe that CXO is what they care about. These kind of the how are you building the AI solution within the risk frameworks?
Yeah.
Even like we're talking about ethical standards being built out there. There are privacy compliance that needs to be thought through at the designing of the AI solutions label, and development against those standards needs to be built, and running those kind of tests as a pre-production step to making sure that those are trackable and there's a traceability being built for the reviewer and approving body member within the enterprise scale. We're talking about all the way from now legal team to infosec architecture design team to now responsible AI org, right? We can give them at the the better deployment kind of pathway based on the risk nature of that AI solutions. Those can be operated within the post production runtime. Kind of the tracking systems are fully integrated within this unified view.
What capabilities, from your perspective, when we're talking about the AI enterprise control plane, right? When we're talking about this now, the area of the business we're totally relying on, what capabilities are non-negotiable in that AI control plane? Would you think it's like kind of all of these really? Agent orchestration, policy enforcement, observability. I mean, we're talking about this a lot. Cost, like what do most platforms, and I guess once you talk about that, where do most platforms actually fall short?
Yeah, so the control plan is becoming such an interesting category creation type of the right narratives that's across the enterprise need.
Hmm.
So imagine you bring AI workflow out of your strategy environment layer, which is a prioritized view to prioritize use cases you built out of your platforms as a AI workflow or AI power solutions or even agent that goes into productions. These all feeds into the control plane as a way for giving this total visibility all the way from, let's say, back office to the boardroom discussions
Yeah.
or storytelling, right? I've
Yeah.
invested $100 million. What's my ROI at the output layer? Is it 10x, 2x, 5x? So do I have a capability to kind of trace those as a CFO grade insights on the control plane? That's the piece one, right? And the second piece is governance and assurance piece of the trackability from the all these industry standards we've been talking about, right? So how do I track those governance, compliance, and compliance remediation piece that we can run those on top of the control plane? So there are certain ways of the risk management workflow can be invoked. So within the time frame of the the compliance regulatory need as well, right? And then third piece I do see is the executive command center view, giving this CXO. So the alignment they have made at the strategy level, how can we continually build the similar narratives and the alignment at the output layer as well, right? So this becomes a interface for the executive to look at these ROI investments. There is trends that happening across the different use cases going into production state. Use cases currently built in the pilot mode, the experimentation mode, and there is system that can be tech who is producing the value based on the business objectives we have defined, so we can make a decision around, do I invest in XYZ project more than the ABC type of the project? This could be like predictive AI type of the investment, or the generative AI. It could be something that as simple as making complex AI workflow usable based on those outcomes that we can track based on the progress view and the business outcome they are producing. So this could be a third kind of interface that could sit in the control plan as well. And it becomes like a unified control plan as an execution layer for the CXO leader to have this alignment view on a daily basis.
And so I think we have about 5 minutes or so for one more question, and I think this one is going to be a good one based on all the work you're doing with these various CXOs across different verticals. If we're looking 18 to 24 months out, who wins the AI control plane? Will it be the hyperscalers, the model providers, security and governance vendors, or is there some category that we haven't even named yet?
Yeah, I think likely not a single category. Hyperscales will certainly dominate the infrastructure piece, right? As we know that model providers will dominate, let's say, frontier intelligence as a model provider, right? And then, but the strategic enterprise layer are fundamentally emerging from governance platform we talked about, orchestration vendors, identity and security providers, and entirely new AI native operating systems that gives the opportunity as a unified intelligence layer all the way from alignment that needs to happen within the strategy and enablement piece that gives the total capability to build and deploy faster within the governance context and then keeping you into measurable value, the value we're talking about, ROI, to qualitative kind of the experience value, right? The experience context of the end user, the user that's coming within the enterprise landscape, to the end user or the customer coming outside as a buyer to that enterprise need. That's where I see as the next 18 months is going to, we're heading out into that directions, right? And there are a lot of like players that's trying to get into that category. But I think the winners or the leading category would be the ownership of that category would be the one who is willing to take this kind of the unified view rather than the fragmented and the component as an offering to the enterprise need, which is to drive the full adoption at scale and value measurement phase.
And I would imagine here, as you're talking to these CXOs, that's what they're really desirous of, right? They want that holistic kind of look on what's going on, and then they want assurances that everything's safe and secure.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's 100% statement, right? Because strategy to measurable outcome fundamentally needs this kind of stitching interfaces that are overlapping or feeding their data and intelligence and decision layer to each other, and giving you this faster time to market value at a decision level, at the board level conversation that's happening, right? So there's a accessibility piece we're talking about at runtime discussion. It might be the CXO having this boardroom discussions or the quarterly review conversation. There should be a system that unifies those kind of intelligence at accuracy, reliability, and better decision capability need.
Well, this is a great conversation. I really appreciate the insights, and always good talking to you. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate your time too. Thanks.